So a funny thing happened to me today while I was at the park. I ran into a so-called designer that works for a fruit company that shall not be named, and he said, "Hey, Android guy, I got something to tell you." And then he leaned in with his man purse and latte breath and whispered, "You need to know that there is a crippling disease out there. And sadly, most Android power users and designers suffer from it. The medical term is having your headum up your assum." So I slapped him upside the head with my tablet. Now I know what you're saying. You're saying, "Jayce, there are better ways to defend your Android honor other than ruining a perfectly good Nexus 7. Felt good though. So I decided I would interview the developers in the Android community who had proven design chops. That's coming up on XDA Developers TV. Now that obnoxious hipster had a point. It's called the curse of knowledge. This idea that an expert can be blinded by their own expertise when they're trying to create something that is simple and easy to use, when in reality, it's a nightmare for the novice to use. So to get deeper into this, we talked to Dr. James Wu, who's got his doctorate in UX design, and he's the director of UX design at Kobo.
You cannot do the job well if you are only thinking about yourself and what works for you. For that exact reason, I tell this to all the developers I work with, particularly, I work with a lot of Android developers, and Android developers really like Android, which makes a lot of sense, and as they ought to like the environments they work in. But they're developers, they know it intimately, and the stuff that works for them and the stuff that makes sense to them is 100 miles, 1,000 miles from the stuff that works for the normal user and that makes sense to the normal user. And there is no magic to figuring it out. It's the first step is always bearing in mind that you are not your user, that you know way more than they do, and that they are not interested in, the latest and greatest jelly bean. They're not interested in the coolest new interaction or whatever. They're interested in getting their stuff done and figuring out the simple stuff. So keeping that in mind so that you're always curious and always trying to find out and try to find new ways to get into their headspace. And the other side is having just a set of tools that you use to get closer to users. And those can be interviews, those can be what we call contextual inquiries, which are going and just sort of being a fly on the wall in the context of wherever you think your tools are going to be used.
Are you watching people? Like, are you watching people use the Kobo reader? Do you just
yeah, all the time. So it's not just the Kobo reader. I mean, if you see me on a plane or on a subway or wherever, whenever I see someone with a tablet, I'm usually watching them.
You're working.
And it's not. It's actually, I mean, part of the best way to do your job is if you actually are really, really interested. And I find how people use stuff really interesting. And I also find the gap between what people try to do with their stuff and what people want to do with their stuff and what their stuff allows them to do. I find that gap really, really interesting because that's the design opportunity, right? That's the opportunity to make something better and to build a better experience. If you can identify what that gap is, it becomes perfectly obvious what you need to do.
One of the things that's very important to Tumblr is the way things look. Every pixel has to be in the exact right place, and it's really hard to find Android developers who make that a priority. It's getting better, thankfully, because Android is getting more visually attractive, and so that was something. I worked for a company called Double Twist for a year that did a music player, and
I love Double Twist.
Double Twist is a great app, and I think we got a lot of mileage out of taking design very seriously. We had a great designer named Sebastian DeWitt, and he and I basically locked ourselves in a closet for 2 months, and we wrote the first version of Double Twist. So really, that set me up for taking on the role as the Android engineer at Tumblr. Over the last year or so there, I've taken the Android app from being basically a web view with some posting capabilities to being a fully native application, and it's been an amazing ride.